Hello, everybody, and welcome to my Lunch and Learn today with Adam Cecil and some other advocates. Before we get started, I want to tell you about myself and the purpose of this Lunch and Learn. My name's Alex Thomas, and I'm running for Ypsilanti Township Supervisor. I'm a longtime advocate in Ypsilanti Township, and in that advocacy, I found that there's a real dearth of knowledge around how our residents' tax dollars are spent in the township and at the county is what we're going to talk about today, and particularly mental health dollars. And when I've been on the campaign trail, initially it was a bit difficult trying to find my voice because I found so much dissonance in the perception many residents had and the perception that many residents had about the areas I've been working on as an advocate, housing, youth programming, criminal justice reform, and mental health. There was this perception that we had, if not a robust services, that we had a pretty good social safety net here in Washington County. And I'm so excited to have my guest here today, Adam Cecil, and I'll let him introduce himself in a moment. But I think many of you probably came to this spot here because you may have seen a video that I circulated in which my guest here, Adam Cecil, he laid out just the issues with community mental health and gave some suggestions for correcting them. And I wanted to expound on those. And that's why I have my guest here, and that's the purpose of this first part of the Lunch and Learn. So I'll be quiet for a moment and let Adam introduce himself. Thank you, Adam.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for having me. Fan of the conversation. Just a few things about me. Is I've got my master's in social work degree. I'm a practicing therapist. I practice. I have my own practice now, but previously I worked at Packard Health here in Washington County. I previously worked on the inpatient psychiatric unit at St. Joe's. I'm at Michigan Medicine part-time in addition to doing therapy. I just got reelected to be for my second term of being a board member for the Michigan chapter of the NASW, the National Alliance of Social Workers, and then one of the founding members of the group called Social Service Workers United of Southeast Michigan. It's a mouthful. We just say SWU, but we're basically an advocacy group to try to improve the working conditions of social service workers in our county and elsewhere. Today, I'm just speaking as myself. I don't represent any of those groups today, but I just, like many people that run in advocacy circles, you end up wearing multiple hats, and that's definitely me. And but I think I hope to use all those, all those different hats to have an informed conversation today.
Oh, great, and we will. And I think you may feel as me because I wear a lot of different hats, but yeah, being able just to be yourself as the county resident and you're a Pittsfield Township resident, I believe, right?
Yeah, yeah. I live right in Gulfside, right on the border. Yep.
Yeah, but huge Ypsi Township experience and former
Mm-hmm.
resident also. But just
Yep.
speaking as ourselves allows you the most freedom.
Yep.
And that's what the residents of Ypsilanti Township need is that unvarnished opinion, and also just the county in general. Our community needs to know the truth around such a serious issue as mental health and how it impacts.
Yeah.
What I loved as I said before, in your public comment, you gave that unvarnished opinion, and what stands out, a few things stand out, but there's no therapy at CMH right now. Or first, let me back up a moment because some people are just new to this conversation. Um, Here in the county, our mental health through county government is delivered through an agency, Community Mental Health. And Community Mental Health receives funding through a millage that was passed 4 or 5 years ago. There was a public safety mental health millage that was passed, and it'll be up for renewal this November. The public safety mental health millage stipulated that 38% of the dollars raised would go to the sheriff's department, another 38% would go to community mental health, and the remaining 24% would be refunded to municipalities that had their own police department. So what's up on the ballot for renewal this November are those same percentages, but the sheriff's percentage of 38%. The difference is there's a stipulation that that 38% slice that the sheriff has, 50% of that has to go towards mental health, housing, and community violence intervention. And at this position, I can't support a renewal that continues to allow those things to be held in law enforcement, and then also uh, continues the lack of services being provided that we have now, and the purpose that we're doing this lunch and learn. So that I wanted to give that that background info, and having said that, if you could like expound on your public comment and say, uh, why is there no therapy and no plan at community mental health?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. So, and then kind of in preparation for today, I talked to, so I think Alex, we spoke before that I know many CMH workers, past and present. So I reached out and just wanted to make sure that I was speaking the most accurately, from an informed perspective. So, I can say that throughout the years, I definitely have helped people call CMH, mainly adults, and that's part of the conversation, and have been told, we don't have therapy, individual therapy right now. I've at Packard Health and other social service work agencies like Catholic Social Services and other places. CMH refers to those agencies to do the therapy, which is often, these are therapists that, may not have specialty in like a diagnosis like schizophrenia or someone that has persistent delusions. Like you really want a specific trained CMH therapist to be serving some of the populations we're talking about. Now I've experienced lots of, no to therapy. We're not having it. There's not a wait list. But I think I have since there's a bit of a mixed outcome scenario going on. So I think for whatever reason, a lot of the message that comes from CMH and that when you call them is kind of to try to direct people away from seeking therapy. But surprisingly, I've learned that if you are open for therapy at CMH, you can be referred to a therapist in-house, but you kind of have to get past that first part. And when you do, it lasts about 12 weeks. I touched on this in my public comment, which is that for our adults in Washtenaw County that go to CMH, they're going to get about 12 weeks of therapy. Now, I think that's inadequate. I think that people deserve the right to have long-term therapists for as long as their issues, matter, and are impacting them, right? So,
And if I could interject for a second, not only you think that's inadequate, wouldn't the industry standard or within the realm of mental health professionals that a 12-week and then cut off, that would be inadequate, or that's
I think that the term that is used is called short-term therapy, and I don't know of any. It's kind of a buzz term that agencies that are understaffed have gone to. It sounds good. It's short-term therapy, but I wouldn't be prepared today to say like, oh, this agency, the NASW, or these clinical bodies are against short-term therapy. I think some people would find them, find it helpful, but I've been seeing clients for 2 to 3 years, and we're still doing significant trauma work and issues. So I can probably circle back on that,
okay.
but short-term therapy is usually only done by agencies that have no other choice in terms of staffing levels, and this is actually true within community mental health itself. So if you were to contrast what you experience as an adult trying to get therapy at CMH, like I said, kind of this like very hard to overcome, no, we don't have any, and then once you're in, you get it, and it's pretty short. Contrast that with what's going on with children that go to CMH. I think a strength is that we offer long-term therapy for kids. You could start 5 and go until 18. Obviously we believe in this model of therapy, and the therapy services available to children is much better than those of adults. And so, I really think that CMH should be doing what it's doing with children, in the sense that you should have the proper staffing and the model to do long-term therapy. We shouldn't be getting these mixed messages about it. My understanding is that once you see a CMH therapist, they're really they're really well trained, and I think the county's doing a good job of supporting evidence-based modalities. But again, I think that for the population we're discussing, not even just the population, just everyone, like therapy can take years, and so I think we're really kind of doing a disservice to our adult populations, across the board.
Thank you. Thank you. In my experience as an advocate, I've come across several unhoused people that had mental health issues and had some experience with CMH. I guess their 12 weeks had expired, or because they definitely were in need of continued services. And it's a huge population. I continually run into, but so again, that just buttresses what you said as far as for the adults.
Yeah.
I just want to, for our audience to understand that so there's a huge community that either they didn't get over that hump and get access to that 12 weeks, or it's expired. And this is in a community in which CMH is able to spend dollars on a very robust promotion campaign and in other ways. And the promotion campaign you may see on buses or billboards and congratulating it. So I just would like going forward, people that are concerned about mental health to really examine the spending choices within CMH, because I think you'll get from some people that there's just limited funding, but the choices, I really don't seem like they've been prudent.
I totally I think that there has been a concentrated effort to kind of invest in the PR front, but when I talk to clients and workers on the inside, you definitely do see kind of a different demographic. And I kind of just harken back to kind of what you said,
Mm-hmm.
or I should say a different outcome. But going back to what you said, I think that there is a perception that we have some pretty, above average or quality services for Washington. We care about these things. But we pay our therapists in every other position worse than every county that touches us. And so I spoke about this in the county commissioners meeting, about the pay and working conditions of our community mental health workers is directly impacting the quality of services. So just to give you if you're going to be a therapist at Washington County, the pay range is around 46,000 to 69,000. And if you're going to be a therapist in Monroe County, the pay range is around 61,000 to 77,000. Right. So even and the county does a horrible job of even recognizing, the experience of a therapist. I know one with 15 plus years, and even though they say the top of the pay range is 69, she couldn't get past, low 50s essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so we really are poorly paying our staff across the board.
You spoke, if I could again, you spoke on March 6th, and you talked about at that time there were some ongoing contract negotiations. Were those completed, or what's the status of that?
Yeah, good question. No, they are still ongoing, and part of those that are hearing this today or have near or following this, there's influence to be had there. I think that there are forces within the county government that really push back on better pay and benefits for our CMH workers, and it's kind of wild, because we should be not only are we the only county that touches us that have decided to throw in public money, but we've also recently the CMH has changed to billing people with private insurance and has opened the doors. So something's not adding up in terms of our CMH getting probably some of the most money and being the worst paying CMH within the region.
And to remind viewers and residents, voters, Washington County administration over the past year voted itself some very high pay raises that are locked in, and in the midst of these negotiations with not only mental health workers but our nurses and other county employees. But that, with sensitivity, is great news that there's still opportunity to support the CMH staff and in those negotiations. And earlier today, I was in a meeting with some of the allies for mental health that are working around that millage, and we were discussing just what are the advocacy points. And I'll introduce that there. We have to support CMH staff, and there's an opportunity right now. So that's great news to hear, and I'll share that.
Absolutely. We're not, it's so important for people to work with one person over time. When there's turnover of that position and they're bogged down, it's not going to go well. I'll just also add to that, CMH, so they are represented by a union, AFSCME, but for those that like follow labor and union stuff, some of the things I'm about to say are going to really raise some eyebrows. So, for example, CMH
Let it
workers.
rip, Adam. You see what's behind me, so
Yeah,
let it rip.
Okay, yeah. So this was alarming when I learned it, but CMH workers only negotiate their contract every 10 years. And it's standard to do 3 years. My understanding is that they're pushing now to try to make this a better, a shorter window where issues can get readjusted. But 10 years is ridiculous in terms of union contracts. The CMH workers are in the largest, I don't know what to be like subgroup, or they're in terms of the within AFSCME there's divisions. The CMH workers are the largest, but not just because there's a lot of CMH workers, but they kind of lumped them in with some other disciplines that probably shouldn't be there. So that's like court trial clerks and like other parts. And so what happens is CMH workers have been told like, oh, we can't pay you because you're in this like huge part of the union, and we'd have to pay everyone, and it's 800 people and things like that. But you have this like pretty ineffective union model in the sense that like you've blended so many different people across county government that there's not a specific true CMH part that's representing for CMH staff. So the 10 years, the way it's formed, it's resulted in very poor and behind the times pay and benefits.
Thank you. That's a very important bit of information. 10 years. Wow. Yeah. Wow. Mm-hmm. We have about 10 minutes left before I have some more guests on, and you mentioned about the good work and the therapy that's available for children. Mm-hmm. And I know some therapists that have work with children in the county, and one of the things that they have said that there's a cutoff once they reach 18 or maybe earlier because it's limited, and then that is just so harmful because they develop this relationship with the child that by definition is in need of mental health services, and there's an end date, and then there's strict they can't have contact. Can you expound on that a bit, or is that can you expound on that? And
yeah,
that be addressed?
I don't have knowledge of what the what the cutoff date for services are. Like I said, we're a fan of the ongoing therapy model, but if it stops at 18, I'm not aware of that. I know kind of across the board, I previously I've done different kinds of work. I know that the state, when it was helping foster care children, used to stop services at 18, and they widely have decided that's way too early. We're going to do 21 and keep the same supports going. So I know that is probably the widely accepted sentiment, is that like 18 is kind of a made up number, but I don't know the specifics of if CMH stops services at that age or not.
Okay, thanks. What what I really loved about your public comment, you gave those specific steps that we could take. And I remember a dashboard,
Mhm.
also bringing group therapy back, and paying staff. We've
Mhm.
talked about paying staff. The importance of a dashboard and group therapy, and anything else you want to add while we have you?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I think in general, the recommendations were coming from a place that we need a lot more transparency in how the money is being spent at CMH and what the outcomes are. So I would love to see a dashboard that shows caseload sizes of different disciplines, as well as estimated wait time for services, right? I think we know that there are people and forces within CMH that want to look good, and they got the billboards. And so my thought process is well, then let's show like what's available, in terms
Mhm.
of wait times and caseload stuff. Now, I definitely think that I want management at CMH to not try to inadvertently like put a unhealthy pressure on staff, but the sentiment is like we need to build up probably like a fleet of clinicians. We need to expand pay and bring in people that can be people's therapists. And I did talk about in the public comments how we were doing, like I think it was 8 years ago
Yeah.
prior to the pandemic. Yeah. And I really was impressed with CMH and how they initially handled the CARES money. They had public listening sessions. And then I saw, as an inpatient psychiatric social worker, a very phenomenal rollout, in my opinion, where they had public group therapy options. So part of CARES money was like, let's not just service a sliver of the county. So for those that are familiar with the CMH structure, the olden days used to be you have to have Medicaid and you have to have a severe mental illness. So you can't just have your common depression, right, or anxiety. You had to have something more. Well, what I like about CARES, what I've liked about what's happening federal level too, is trying to open the doors to who can come. And so we opened the doors. We had public group therapy options. That was very fantastic. I've often told my own therapy clients the rate of your progress is going to double if you add in a group therapy into individual session. That's what I've seen. Is it's such an accelerant. But now I think group therapy is something where you have to it's not available. It's not, you have to become a full CMH client. And there's a big difference between like being like, I just got to show up and I'm there and I can do it, versus like have to do an intake process, meet certain criteria, be referred by my case manager. We don't want to do all the wall keeping, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I remember too CMH saying if you want individual therapy, you can have it. I think that needs to be the goal is everyone who wants an ongoing individual therapist can have one. We'll have to invest in them, but that was the original plan. Since COVID hit, I talked about how those services got stopped. At this point, cares if you call, regardless of insurance or your issues, I think you get assigned a case manager and you can see a psychiatrist. Those are good, but they've taken away the therapeutic aspects of cares. So that I'd like to see get reinvested in. And in general, I've spoken to a number of CMH staff who are not really sure who, like, where the CARES money is going, and who the CARES staff are. And so I think really there needs to be a full accounting of what happened to the CARES money, post a certain time. I think at that same Board of Commissioners meeting, I believe it was Trish Cortez talked about how they are on a surplus of money, that they've kept it. And Alex, do you remember? I thought it was like 6 million.
I can't. Um, the $6 million number that immediately comes to mind with is comes around with law enforcement.
Okay,
There's a memorandum of understanding with the sheriff that entitles the sheriff's department, with Jerry Clayton only as sheriff. So it goes away when he goes away. But while Jerry Clayton's the sheriff, any excess funds that are left at the end of the year, the sheriff's department gets to retain, as opposed to other county departments where it returns back to the general fund. And because the sheriff's department has been able to retain those funds, there's a $6 million surplus within the sheriff's department. But I don't know about the CMH.
I'm positive that Trish provided testimony on them having a care surplus and not spending the money. I think I'll step back on what the amount is. I do know that a large part of the CARES money was spent on a failed building, the 750 address, where it wasn't really designed with staff input, and there were significant safety issues. If it was going to be a crisis center for people, that was another part of CARES, is we're going to have a crisis center where people can go. That never manifested because of the poor planning and design and implementation of some of the CARES money. So I just sense there's a very big resistance to really providing a public accounting of like where the CARES money goes and has gone. Again, I just big difference pre and post pandemic. And the last thing I'll add to Alex, that because we're talking about the sheriffs, is the other thing that we need to change is I think for those that know Washington County, the sheriff has a disproportionate amount of influence in many ways. But what workers have told me is that translates into some pretty scary situations when it comes to mental health. Specifically, sheriffs, deputies not deferring to master level clinicians on what could be needed for someone with a severe mental illness. And so I had one person recall a time when there was an individual with severe psychosis and delusions, had dug a hole through his apartment wall into the other apartment that was there, had ordered a bunch of guns online, and basically was very high risk of using them. And CMH staff said this person needs to be brought to the hospital. This person absolutely needs to get hospitalized. They're legally, they provided a petition, which is what you need to transport someone to the hospital. And the deputy said, unless we heard that person say those things, unless we saw it, we will not take that person to the hospital. You have to go get a signed court order by the judge, which can take, which is hard to get. It's you're talking about adding a day or two in business terms of someone who's extremely psychotic with a lot of guns, and they said, no, we're not doing it. We don't trust you. We don't trust your judgment. We don't trust what you've heard or said to the CMH worker. And when workers have gone and been like, this is ridiculous. Why did I get a degree in mental health if a deputy who doesn't have the same training education can just say, no, I don't trust your judgment. CMH staff have said, well, we got to keep a good relationship, or the management said, well, we don't want to hurt our relationship with the sheriff's department. And that's like so symptomatic of so much with Washoe County, is not wanting to offend the sheriff's office. And I'm just here to say that, well, in that case, that was a borderline potential mass shooting situation. And and that's gonna that dynamic needs to change, and CMH, the staff on the front lines saying what's needed, need to be listened to.
Absolutely. And that terrifies me, hearing that story, what we know about Aurora Rosser in the past. I think it comes from not dealing with reality. It's interesting. It's interesting, the people charged, the politicians and decision makers in charge, appear delusional. I'm good. I can say that I'm not a mental health professional, so just how that word is used in the common language, it's delusional to me. I don't understand the decisions that are being made, just how you laid out, and why we haven't addressed it and talked about it really. Before I let you go, because we have our other guests, and take, no rush. I found you at public comment, and I've heard just very eloquent, just really passionate people every week, give rise to this and speak about this. And I hope they continue to do so. But what can other people do, in your opinion, to get those steps, that dashboard, the group therapy, better salaries. Where are the pressure points? What can we do better?
Yeah, I mean, I think the pressure points would probably have to come from county commissioners and Greg Dill. I think that, I think it'd probably be taught if you're in spaces and circles where you can talk to them on the side and raise this awareness. I think that's a big thing. I think if CMH is having more public, I think CMH showed the first time the CARES Money came out that when they have public listening sessions, you know, at least I thought they listened the first time. So if there's more public listening, I think that's the sessions, that's good. And I believe there's a subcommittee within the commissioners about mental health. It would be great to start, and maybe more, Alex, on that, but I know Commissioner Hodges is on it. But there is a specific like subcommittee of the commissioners that like govern the CMH stuff. So maybe we start talking there. So those are some ideas.
Thank you. I will direct people there. And you mentioned Commissioner Hodge. I'll say Commissioner Hodge, Commissioner Somerville, Commissioner Sanders. Those are definites that have just consistently supported law enforcement in that narrative that we're talking about. And all fine people and upstanding representatives, but I just think making a horrible choice on this that harms the community by deferring to law enforcement so much. So well, thank you, Adam. I hope we'll do again and longer. And you're welcome to stay if you like, but if you could move on if enjoy your day.
Yeah, Alex, thank you so much. Pulling for you on the commissioner's race, and I'll go off camera and listen to some of the next guests.
All righty. Have a good one. Thank you. Please enjoy. Mr. Geiringer, Brian Geiringer, and Ravyn, please join us. Ravyn, I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your last name, and I don't have my glasses on.
That's all right. It's Kalfayan.
Welcome, Ms. Kalfayan. Audience, I want to let you know who my illustrious guests are and why I had them here today. We have Brian Geiringer and Ravyn Kalfayan, and they both are Ypsi City residents, and besides being good friends of mine, they're passionate advocates around housing and other issues in Ypsi City. And what they're here today to talk about are some ballot initiatives that I think would be great efforts, and I know are needed efforts in Ypsilanti Township. But I really wanted to give them an opportunity to tell about what's going on in each of those and in the city. So I don't know who would like to introduce themselves first or say anything or just start, but you're welcome. Brian, I'll pick Ravyn then. Ravyn. Ravyn, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're here.
Yeah, Ravyn Kalfayan. I've lived in Ypsilanti City for a little bit more than 10 years now. I don't work in the social services area anymore, but I did previously around housing insecurity, food insecurity. I work at U of M Dearborn now, but I would just describe myself as a community organizer. I try and jump in where it makes sense for me to. Brian, I feel like kind of jump-started these ballot initiatives, and I feel like they touch on issues that are like very severely affecting people in Ypsilanti and the township in the same way. So I think they're really great strategic moves, and we're hoping that we can get enough signatures, get these on the ballot in November.
All right, thank you. Me too. Brian, you want to just let the audience know who you are?
Yeah, sure. Thanks so much for having us, Alex. Yeah, my name is Brian Geiringer. I've lived in Ypsi about 8 years and have been, doing grassroots organizing for most of it. And so, like Ravyn said, I mean, we actually, a few people tried to run a ballot initiative in 2020 about renters' rights or tenant rights. And we were novices then, and we didn't do it right, and it failed before we were stopped from collecting signatures, unfortunately. So this time around, we started earlier, and we got a lot more input from a lot of community groups and players. And I think we had, Ravyn, like 7 ideas that we were floating for a while, and so we've whittled it down to 3. Both because through community interest, what we had capacity for, and also for legal reasons, some of the things we were interested in were a little beyond our ability for 2024, though we're, always thinking about 2026 and beyond.
Ooh, I'm
You,
going to
you
ask you
know,
about those three if I could cut you off because I want to like bring it home for the audience, those specific three, but maybe we'll have time to, I'm really interested in, those things that didn't make it, but
definitely.
I did want to let the audience know because this is so integral to so many of the problems, I think, in the township and other areas. People don't know where they're at and the different municipalities. And I always say when I think of Ypsi, you're talking about four municipalities: the city of Ypsilanti, which is about 20,000 people, uh, the township of Ypsilanti that surrounds the city, which is about 60,000 people, the southern part of Superior Township, which encompasses Sycamore Meadows and Danbury Park and is north of Clark Road, south of Geddes Road, north of Clark Road. That's what I think of as Southern Superior Township and Ypsi. And then also Eastern Pittsfield. If you're between 23 and Carpenter or 23 and Gulfside, actually, you're in Pittsfield Township. So Myers on Carpenter Road is Pittsfield Township. You can put Ypsi on the mail, though. And many people think that area as Ypsi. And in fact, there was a shooting in the Myers parking lot, and the way MLive reported was Ypsi area Myers is the shooting. There was no mention of Pittsfield. So, and that's typical for a lot of issues. So I point that all out because it's really important. We're in the election season, and there are representatives that are really speaking to these issues in each of those municipalities and at the county level. And just people really need to know exactly where they're at, and they can just check that out with the little research that I will go into now. But you guys are with the city, and there's the three ballot initiatives. And Brian, I kind of interrupted you, but if you what are those three ballot initiatives?
Sure, yeah, and no worries. I would just say too to what you were just speaking to, Alex, that and Raven knows this well that when we are collecting signatures, they are unfortunately only for the city, and we actually carry around on our clipboards a map of the city on the back because so many people are unaware of the precise municipality they live in, and so we have a lot of like Ypsi Township folks who are like, I live in Ypsi, absolutely, I'll sign, and we have to be like, sorry, you should just vote for Alex Thomas, but you can't sign these. You can help us collect signatures if you'd like, and shout out to anyone out there who wants to help with these. But so yes, the three they are technically city charter amendment petitions. The first one is for tenant rights. It does three things. It bans all rental application fees, straight up. Number two, it creates a law called the right of first refusal that gives tenants the first opportunity to buy their home if their landlord is selling it. And that also applies to businesses. It also applies to larger, if you, let's say you live in like a duplex or like a larger building, if there's the landlord is selling, the tenants can get together and try to buy it collectively. And the third thing it does is create an online rental registry, which has many benefits, especially for organizing, but also even as simple as, say, you want to rent a new apartment, you could look up that apartment, you could look up its history and see, for example, was there a big mold problem in this apartment 2 months before I'm thinking about renting it, and was it just painted over? So that's all in number one. Number two is for nonpartisan elections. It's pretty simple, but the basic idea is that Ypsilanti and Ann Arbor are the last two cities in the state to have partisan city elections. And the problem with that is that that means effectively, and especially in Ypsi, with 50% of votes in general elections going straight ticket Democrat, those straight ticket votes go all the way down to the city level. And it means effectively only the Democrat who wins the primary election wins every election. So what we have is a city council and mayor, those who weren't appointed, which is even worse, are all full of people who won a Democratic primary, often uncontested, but even if it is contested, it's only 15% of Ypsi residents who are voting. And those voters do tend to be older, whiter, and more conservative. So we want to change that so that there's no longer partisan designations, no matter how you feel about the parties. And basically, the city elections are going to be held in November. There will hopefully be more contests, and people running for those seats will be forced to come out with more comprehensive plans and programs, and we can actually see what they're running on. And then the third thing we're doing is a police budget oversight charter amendment, which is pretty simple. It just means that when city council wants to increase the police budget, they have to come forward to the residents of the city with a comprehensive plan, and the city gets to vote on it rather than just have it sort of handed down to them from the city.
Right.
So three, yep.
Right. And thanks for your work in that. Ravyn, do you want to add something to?
Yeah, just speaking about the township city connection, like Brian was saying, whenever we canvass, people from the township are so interested in all of the initiatives, and particularly the tenants one. I had a great conversation with somebody who was in the township, but just talking about how like hyper exploitative a lot of the landlords there are too. You know, the issues don't just stop at the borders of the city. And she was talking a lot about how these application fees were incredibly prohibitive when she was trying to find an apartment.
Mhm.
So it just goes to show that there's so much, you know, this applies to the city, but there's so much work I think we can do across these, you know, borders to try and figure out these issues together.
Absolutely. And thank you for bringing that up. And I hope you told that person to vote for me. And I'd love to get a hold of them.
Definitely.
For each of these, around tenants, around the primary election, and also definitely police, those issues are so resonate so much in the township. Around tenancy, in 2019, I remember this so clearly because I was featured in the story. The fourth most popular story on M Live in 2019 was entitled "Modern Day Segregation," and it talked about the concentration of housing vouchers in particular areas of Ypsilanti Township, West Willow being one of them. And it talked about that because there's been such within Ypsilanti Township. When I grew up, West Willow was 99% owner occupied. Through the challenges of capitalism and evolution and things, right now our neighborhood is 60 to 70% rental, and there's a huge rental population across the township because of the exorbitant housing cost in Ann Arbor and it makes the Ypsilanti Township the place of the only place people can afford to somewhat afford to survive. You know, it's not living and thriving, but it's a difficult existence of being a renter in Ypsilanti Township. So anything that's going to empower tenants and give them some alternatives or just some power in that relationship with the landlords, and also give an opportunity for landlords and tenants to dialogue more. And actually, what's going on in Ypsi Township, the residents there, to work directly with each other instead of third parties and people from outside of the township with other interests. So it's anything that's going to empower tenants more in Ypsilanti Township. It's also an opportunity to just make the township better and a better quality of life for everyone. So I'm really excited about helping. I think township folks and advocates and people interested should really support the city effort on all of these initiatives, and then and take that experience back to the township and spread it to our neighbors. So that's my hope. And with tenancy also, the huge need for or advocacy around tenants' rights. Ypsilanti Township government was investigated by the Justice Department for discriminating against renters and people with vouchers. It's a well documented, but they had a new property and they wanted to ban voucher holders from even having an opportunity to live there, and that's illegal and also immoral. Uh, I know in the city there's also a I believe on the record a ban on income discrimination, which is what Ypsi Township was doing by banning vouchers because that is income and it should be counted as income, but very little enforcement around the Ypsi city ordinance. And I think in this organizing effort, we put some mechanisms in place, for enforcement in Ypsi City and the institution of a policy in the township with enforcement. So yeah, we need it in the township.
Yeah, I think I really like that you brought up the enforcement part because that was a big conversation when we were developing these things because there are, obviously regulations around what a landlord's supposed to do to keep the quality of the apartment up to, to code or whatever, but there's a huge issue in just enforcement. And so I think even if we get these three things passed, which are really great, incredible, the work doesn't end. Like we all have to hold the city accountable. We all have to like hold their feet to the fire basically to be like, well, this is law now. You know, this actually needs to be enforced. So I think that's even a larger project for, the city and the township for the people that live there, residents.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the second initiative, uh, prime, no, Brian, could you or Raven explain? I've been explaining it as doing away with uh, primaries, primary voting, and just allowing people to vote straight for their local representatives in November. Is that good enough to articulate it well enough, or?
Yeah, the one thing I want to be careful about with that is that it would not get rid of, people would still be voting for the primaries on for races above the city, or in your case, the township, if something happened there. But yeah, I mean,
So
I
we'd
think
have an August primary. If that's Thanks for the clarification. So
August 6th.
yeah, yeah, of
Yeah,
course,
we
this year.
still and in Ipsy we still have the city races on those. So I
Right,
think
but
there's only one contested race in the city for Ward 3, who one of the candidates is Amber Fellows, who's been a big support and help with these and supports the three very much, but has been in the interesting position where Amber has no choice but to run as a Democrat, honestly, because in 2020 they ran as a nonpartisan candidate in November, and we're up against like I said, 50% straight ticket vote for Democrats. So literally an impossible win in that.
yeah. Um, I wanted to point out that, I wanted to clarify. So, if the ballot initiatives did go through, what that would look like, we'd have an August primary, but it would everything county and up would be, but the city election, or in my case, township, would be in November. So you'd have an August primary, but for offices above the city and township level.
Exactly. Yeah.
Great. And just within the township, well, why that so needed? Our My opponent is part of a family that's been in power in Ypsilanti Township for over 50 years and consistently running as Democrats. Uh, Yet their policy choices and the decisions that they make are just at odds with what the Democratic Party states in their platform. Uh, One example you'll see in the Democratic Party platform mention about public transportation and recognizing the need for relooking at our transportation system. Within Ypsilanti Township, just last year, there was the AATA millage or funding that was up, and Ypsilanti Township decided to spend money to actually combat and to go against the millage. So they spent about $6,000 in a campaign to get Ypsi Township residents to vote against the public transportation millage, which definitely would impact and help out its most vulnerable Ypsilanti Township residents that rely on public transportation. But they spent $6,000 to beat it, and it was wasted. Thankfully it did pass the transportation millage, and it passed in Ypsi Township too by just a couple of percentage points. So it's a great example of how they'll just actually run as conservative. They're actually, I say, conservatives or Republicans in Democrats' clothing, or whatever label you want to put it. make decisions outside of the township's interests, and
Yeah.
that's consistent.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. And I would just mention, I mean, I've been paying attention to city council since 2017, and we have one ward of our three in the city that um save for maybe one um council member from this ward. Ward two is what I'm talking about. The elected officials from that ward are incredibly conservative and would be considered Republicans on anyone's sort of normal compass. But they understand. I mean, they understood way before we did that you call yourself a Democrat if you want to win. Desiree Simmons also ran nonpartisan in 2018 and lost despite so much popularity, and then understood what had to happen, ran as a Democrat in 2022 and won, and obviously won her against her recall campaign recently. So an incredibly popular candidate, but cannot win in a as a nonpartisan against a partisan Democrat. Literally impossible, or basically impossible. And I would just mention too that when we're talking about 15% of residents voting in the primary, and we know who those people are in general. I mean, no hate, but it tends to be conservatives and people who are well plugged into the sort of establishment. So it's no surprise that our city council in Ypsi, and I think the board of trustees in Ypsi Township is significantly more conservative and anti against its own residents, as you just mentioned, Alex, um, than the people want. So, I think that is obviously that problem goes way beyond partisan elections. We see it in other places too, but that is a big obstacle for getting representation that at all reflects what the people want.
Absolutely. And in Ypsilanti Township, the entire board, uh, well, there's exception of one. Six of the seven live in the most affluent part of the township, where the housing insecurity issues, the youth violence, the health disparities, they're not as pronounced. So residents in that more affluent area, they're being spoon-fed a narrative from law enforcement and the current township leadership that doesn't match the reality of the township. They're about, and this is election season. But in the most vulnerable areas of the township, we're dealing with the reality of all those issues. And there's tends to be lower voter turnout. Also, as you were pointed out, that in the August primary, those tend to be more affluent, more white, and just and more conservative. So that matches Ypsilanti Township, and hence the need for this lunch and learn. And why I'm glad you guys are here. We need to educate people and understand the reality that's going in Ypsilanti Township, and the need for all of these efforts. Um, before I jump on to law enforcement, because what do we have about? Oh wow, we only have about 5 more minutes. Um, the law enforcement issue right now, and it's like, well, I've been talking so much. I want to get you guys in on tenants' rights or the partisan or the primaries. Do you guys want to add anything before we jump into law enforcement? No thoughts? Okay. Guess my voice is okay. I get tired of it sometimes. But no, that third initiative speaks to me so much as a township resident, and it's so important. I have it in my head, and I've been repeating it, and maybe Brian, you can clarify that requiring a citywide vote for any increase in funding to law enforcement. Is that the third ballot initiative? That is it. Uh, within Ypsilanti Township.
If I might, yeah, and I want Raven's opinion on more of the content here, but just to get very clear about what we are running. There's two more specifications. So you said it right, but the other specifications are one that it has to be in a general election, so it can't be in May or August.
Oh,
This vote from the city that the city would put forward, and the second thing that we drew inspiration from the what do they call it? The public safety and mental health millage at the
Hmm.
county level. And we drew negative inspiration from that because we think that's kind of bullshit putting those two things together. So what we did here is made it so that not only does the city need to get a vote from its residents to approve police budget increases, but that ballot question that would approve that increase needs to stand by itself. It cannot be wrapped in with public health or any other or mental health, whatever. It can't be wrapped in with any other issue. So it has to be on that increase alone.
Wow, I love it, and and it's just a pleasure working with smart, experienced advocates, and you have to be sophisticated in Ypsi City, Washtenaw County, and Ypsilanti Township, uh, because you get the wool pull over your eyes, and you just run into disingenuous politicians, spokespeople. So, I love how you point out the stipulation that it needs to be a November election. That's what made me think of what I just said, because of if we go back to 2020 and George Floyd, uh, following that in August, there was a on the in the August primary, there was a police millage in Ypsilanti Township, and there was about 8% turnout in that August election. It was 2021. It's about 8% turnout in that millage in that August election that turned out for that millage, and it passed by flying colors in that older, whiter, more conservative voter that comes out in August primary. So that's why I really like that smart sophistication and requiring that it's in the November primary. Excuse me, November in the November election, and it makes such a huge difference uh in uh in Ypsilanti Township. Bernie Sanders won Ypsilanti Township. Abdul Syed won Ypsilanti Township against Gretchen Whitmer in the governor's race. So the progressives and the true fuller electorate come out more in the November election. So it's a much better reflection of what the communities will, and it's a much more democratic small D uh, uh,
Yeah.
turnout. You
I
know.
was gonna say too, I think it's important because, Ypsilanti and Ypsilanti Township are where the majority of the Black people live in Washtenaw County. And there's, obviously an issue of over policing. And I have a statistic here. So comparatively, the city of Adrian and the city of Ypsilanti, um, the police budget for the city of Ypsilanti was like $1.7 million more than the city of Adrian, which is like a predominantly white city. And so it just goes to prove that there's just an overabundance of funding being put towards policing, mostly because, it's like a racial discrimination issue. And I think I can't remember the exact polling, but I think Brian, you referenced it, but that the majority of like Ypsi residents, I think in Ward 1, don't want more funding to go to the police. So we feel like this is a great way to like just be more fiscally responsible, but get the police budget in ratio to cities of similar size.
Absolutely, absolutely, and thank you so much for pointing that out, because I like
Yeah.
to, Washtenaw County is about 360,000 people, Ypsilanti Township 60,000 people, about 30% African American. So we about 2020. Our African American population in Ypsilanti Township is about the size of the entire population of the city of Ypsilanti. And when I laid out those different municipalities, Ypsi City is about 30% African American, so is Ypsilanti Township. Superior uh, is it's around 30, but it's Superior Township's about 14,000 people, about 30% of African American population, but all concentrated in that southern area between Gettys and Clark Road and MacArthur Boulevard. So yes, and heavily over policed. So all of Ipsy and all the municipalities can use all these ballot initiatives. And
Yeah.
I'm gonna respect all of your time. I'll give you a chance, Brian and Raven, if you want to say anything else. But we're
Yeah, I'll just add one thing since Raven brought it up. So, I was there in 2021. There was our current mayor, the council member at the time, Nicole Brown, um, said herself, she said it was a controversial amendment to the city's 2021 budget or the fiscal year 21-22
Mhm.
budget, where she added I can't remember, I think it was something like $350,000, which in Ypsi is a lot, to the budget for police for 3 new police officers, which they still are not able to fill those roles. But let me get to the point. What am I trying to say? So we a lot of people, I wrote an article for What's Left about this. It's called Going into the Red for More Police. A lot of people were up in arms about this last minute so-called controversial amendment to the budget. On the second reading, we had no chance to fight it before it got passed. And some of our, well, we can look into the past on who voted for that. It narrowly won. And so it was effectively shoved down our throats. But one of the things I want to bring up that Ravyn just brought up was the way that council members at the time wielded race, and I would say wielded the very, very serious real issue of gun violence, especially on the south side of Ypsi, in that moment, and wielded it against a lot of the organizers weren't Black at the time. Mm-hmm. But they sort of wanted to, they were trying to speak for the South Side and speak for the Black South Side in that moment, saying that this is what people want. They want more police. Yeah. So a couple of organizers with What's Left actually decided to run a poll on the South Side, and they only knocked 56 doors. So I don't want to claim this as a scientific study or anything. It was 56 doors, but of the or 56 responses. Of the 56 responses to the question, do you want more money for police in Ypsilanti? Only 3 said yes.
Out of 56.
3 out of 56. So I think it's just very important. I mean, that's why we're talking about going to a vote. If the people want an increase in the police budget, then we should have an increase in the police budget. But it's not okay for city council to shove it down our throats effectively. And so yeah, I'll end there. Thank you so much for having us, Alex. I really hope people listening support your campaign, Canvas for Alex in Ypsi Township. Tell everyone you know about Alex Thomas for supervisor, and anyone also in the area who wants to help us out collecting signatures. Look up our social media. It's YpsiBIG on Instagram and YpsiBIG Ballot Initiative Group on Facebook. I hope people also support Amber Fellows for Ward 3 in Ypsi City. And yeah, I'm just glad to be here. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and they can go and donate at my website too, alexthomas2024.com. I think one of the reasons we're up against and so difficult is because there's so much money in law enforcement, and that's also spent on promoting this narrative that goes against reality. But Ravyn, please.
Nothing from me. I just wanted to thank you, Alex. It's been great to work with you a little bit more the past couple months. I'm excited to see where our partnership between the city and the township can grow. Thank you for having us on here.
Oh, same here. And thank you so much. And I'm really excited about what's going on in the city and in the township and working with both of you in the future.